For 50 years, this company was the pride of the human race. They built the 747, the queen of the skies. They helped put a man on the moon. They had a slogan that airline pilots actually believed. If it's not Boeing, I'm not going. But today, if it's Boeing, you might want to check the bolts. From doors flying off mid-flight, to whistleblowers dying under mysterious circumstances, to planes literally diving into the ground. The fall of Boeing is the biggest industrial tragedy of the 21st century. But here's the thing, this didn't happen by accident. Boeing didn't forget how to build planes. They were hijacked. In 1997, a small group of financial executives infiltrated the company, fired the engineers, and deliberately dismantled the culture of safety to pump up the stock price. This is not a story about bad engineering. This is a story about corporate sabotage. Part 1. The Engineer's Paradise, before 1997. To understand the crime, you have to understand the victim. Before 1997, Boeing was based in Seattle. It was run by engineers, for engineers. The CEO, Phil Condit, was an aerodynamicist. The culture was simple. You build the best plane possible, and the profit will follow. It was a culture of arrogance, yes, but it was earned. They were the best in the world. But across the country, their rival, McDonnell Douglas, was failing. McDonnell Douglas was run by finance guys. They didn't care about aerodynamics. They cared about quarterly earnings. As a result, their planes were mediocre, and they were going broke. So, in a twist of fate that would doom the aviation industry, Boeing decided to buy them out. It was called a merger, but inside the company, they called it something else, the hunter becoming the prey. Because when the dust settled, the engineers from Boeing were pushed aside, and the ruthless cost-cutters from McDonnell Douglas took over. Enter the villain of our story, Harry Stonecipher. Part 2. The Infection. Harry Stonecipher was the CEO of McDonnell Douglas. When he took over as president of Boeing, he said the quiet part out loud. He told a newspaper, "When people say I bought Boeing to change the culture, that is exactly the intent." He mocked the engineers, saying they acted like a Boy Scout association rather than a business. His first move, divide and conquer. In 2001, the new leadership moved Boeing's headquarters from Seattle, where the planes were actually built, to a skyscraper in Chicago, 2,000 miles away. Why? To physically separate the executives from the engineers. They didn't want to hear about safety concerns. They didn't want to hear about bolt tolerances. They wanted to hear about profit margins. And for a while, it worked. Wall Street loved the new Boeing. The stock soared, dividends flowed. They spent billions buying back their own stock to make the executives rich. But while the stock price was going up, the quality was rotting from the inside out. But the Chicago executives didn't just want to separate the headquarters. They wanted to dismantle the factory floor itself. They launched a strategy called Partnering for Success. It sounded nice. In reality, it was an attempt to outsource the actual building of the airplanes to the lowest bidder. When they launched the 787 Dreamliner, Boeing decided they wouldn't build the plane anymore. They would just be assemblers. They paid other companies to build the wings in Japan, the fuselage in Italy, and the landing gear in the United Kingdom. The plan was to save money. It backfired spectacularly. When the pieces arrived in Seattle, they didn't fit. The Italian sections didn't line up with the Japanese sections. There were gaps in the fuselage. The wiring was a mess. Instead of saving money, Boeing had to spend billions fixing these Frankenstein planes. They were running 3 years behind schedule. And when the Dreamliner finally flew, the batteries caught fire. In 2013, the entire fleet was grounded. It was a humiliating warning sign. The engineers screamed that you cannot outsource quality control, but the executives didn't listen. Why? Because they were too busy looting the company vault. Part 3. The 737 MAX disaster. To really understand why the 737 MAX disaster happened, you have to follow the money. Between 2013 and 2019, the exact years they should have been designing a new safe airplane, Boeing spent $43 billion on stock buybacks. Let me repeat that, $43 billion. It costs roughly $15 billion to design a brand new, safe, state-of-the-art airplane from scratch. Boeing could have built 2 entirely new planes and still had money left over. Instead, they took that cash and used it to artificially inflate their stock price. This triggered massive bonuses for the CEO and the board of directors. They cannibalized the company's future to pay for their own yachts today. And when the engineers asked for budget to test the MCA software, they were told there was no money. The cracks finally shattered in 2011. Boeing's rival, Airbus, launched a new, fuel-efficient plane, the A320neo. American Airlines warned Boeing, "Build us something better, or we are switching to Airbus." Boeing panicked. They needed a new plane fast, but designing a new plane takes 10 years and billions of dollars. The Chicago suits didn't want to spend that money, so they decided to hack it. They took the 737, a frame designed in the 1960s, and slapped massive new engines on it. The engines were so big, they had to be moved forward on the wing, which made the plane unstable. If you throttled up, the nose would pitch up and the plane would stall. An engineering company would have said, "This is unsafe, redesign the plane." The new Boeing said, "Fix it with software." They installed a secret software called MCA. If the plane felt the nose go up, the computer would automatically force the nose down. They didn't tell the pilots. They didn't tell the regulators. Why? Because if they admitted the plane was new, pilots would need simulator training. That costs money. By hiding MCA, Boeing promised airlines they wouldn't need training. It was a sales pitch, built on a lie. Internal emails later revealed exactly what the employees thought. One employee wrote, "This airplane is designed by clowns, who are in turn supervised by monkeys." They knew, but the culture of fear created by Harry Stonecipher meant that if you spoke up, you were fired, so they stayed silent. Part 4. The Blood Price. In October 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 crashed into the Java Sea. 5 months later, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 slammed into the ground. 346 people dead. In both cases, the MCA software malfunctioned. It thought the plane was stalling when it wasn't. It forced the nose down. The pilots fought back, pulling on the stick, but the computer was stronger. They were fighting a ghost in the machine that Boeing hadn't even told them existed. Boeing's response? They blamed the pilots. They blamed foreign maintenance crews. They did everything except admit that they had sacrificed safety for stock price. Eventually, the truth came out. The fleet was grounded. The stock tanked. It cost them $20 billion, but the damage was already done. Part 5. The Quality Escape, Present Day. You might think, okay, surely they learned their lesson after the 737 MAX. Wrong. In January 2024, a door plug blew off an Alaska Airlines flight at 16,000 feet. Why? Because the bolts were missing. It turns out, Boeing had outsourced so much of their manufacturing to a company called Spirit Aero Systems that they lost control of their own supply chain. Whistleblowers like John Barnett, who tragically died in the middle of his deposition, warned that workers were being pressured to ignore defects just to keep the assembly line moving. This wasn't a mistake. This was the result of 20 years of firing experienced mechanics and replacing them with cheaper, temporary labor. The vested myth. There's a myth in modern business that says the only purpose of a corporation is to maximize shareholder value. Boeing proved that myth is a lie. By chasing the stock price above all else, they destroyed the stock price. By cutting costs on safety, they incurred the biggest costs in aviation history. Boeing is still too big to fail. The US government will likely keep them alive because they are a defense contractor. But the Queen of the Skies, she is gone, and she was killed by the very people who were paid to protect her. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to subscribe. We are deconstructing the biggest myths in business every single week. And let me know in the comments, would you fly on a 737 MAX today?